Hi guys, Samantha from Cernit Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a cool oriental pendant that I've designed. Now here is a similar version, and this was where I was playing around with it and seeing how it would look, and we're creating something similar to this in a very similar shape, but it's going to be quite different at the same time. So first what you want to do is you want to pick out your image transfer, and I've got a nice Japanese image transfer here, and this is from Lisa Pavelka's water slide transfers. Let me just show you those. So there's a whole bunch of them in here. So these are the ones that you're looking for, and this is the type you're looking for. So this is the image transfer I have chosen, and so now I want to do a watercolor and a mica shift to go with it. So we'll start with the watercolor. I want some Primo Gold, Primo Black, and Primo White. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to stack them. I'm going to go Gold, Black, and White. And these are all run out on my thickest setting. They don't necessarily have to be the thickest setting, you just want them all run out on the same setting on your pasta machine. And now we're only making one pendant, so we don't need very much clay. So if you wanted to make more than one pendant, you'll want to use a little bit more clay than I'm using. And now when you trim these off, just remember to go back and peel away that clay so that you can reuse it. Right, and there we are. Now I'll run that through my thickest setting again. Okay, and here's how it should come out. Now just quickly trim up those ends. There we are. Now we are ready to begin painting. And now I have chosen some fairly brittle gold clay for the back because I want it to be brittle when I rip it up, because then it looks really nice. So don't use super soft clays for this technique. This technique works best if you're using somewhat more brittle clays. Now for the next step, you can use mica powders, pastels, gelatos, acrylic paint, alcohol ink, gilder's paste, and many other forms of mixed media on here. So I'm going to be using gelatos, but if you were going to use paint, here are some recommendations. Here's Martha Stewart's paint, and this is the Gazing Ball colour. You can use this one with the same colour, and this one is the Eclipse. Again, another Martha Stewart paint, and this one is the Fruit Punch. And then finally a Dazzling Metallics one, and this is the Berry. So those would go quite nicely together if you were using paint, and you could accent with some gold and silver. But today I'm going to be using gelatos, and I'm going to be accenting with a little bit of a gold paint. And so this is the set of gelatos that I've got, and I'm going to be using pinks mainly. So I'm going to get out those pinks, and then I'll tell you what the colours are in just a minute. Okay, so here are the ones that I've got. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to use the red, I might use a little bit of it. So the pinks, the colours that I've got are Red Cherry, Bubblegum, Passion Fruit, and let's see, this one is Lavender. So those are the gelatos that I'm using, and you can get them on Amazon, eBay, and most craft stores. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to take them, and I'm going to start with my lightest colour, and I'm just going to rub them along the surface of the clay. And it's giving you, if it is giving you trouble, spray a little bit of water onto the clay and it will slide along a lot more. But it's okay for the most part on raw clay, you don't need to do that. Okay, and you'll just go through all of your colours until you have a solid, until you can't see any more of your white. And you would do the same with paint. You would just brush the paint on exactly like this, except that you would need each colour to dry before you could apply the next colour, because otherwise they would mix together. And this is another reason why I like using the gelatos more than paint, because you don't have to wait. Okay, And so here is how it looks. I've decided to not use the gold paint this time around. I think it looks quite nice the way it is. So those gelatos blended really nicely into each other. So that's why I like using gelatos. Now what we want to do is just pick this up and just make sure that you're happy with it. And then I've got a sheet of translucent here that was run out on my thinnest setting possible. And it was stretched slightly as well. And I like to make a big sheet because sometimes you get pasta machine goobers all over it. Like you can see some around the edges here. So I like to make a big sheet. And then the parts that aren't completely clean, I will... Okay, so what I like to do with the parts that have the goobers on them, I like to just use those in other projects where I don't need the translucent to be completely clean. Whereas when I'm using this technique, I do need the translucent to be quite clean. I don't want any air bubbles in it. So I like to use brand new translucent. And I'm using a translucent white Primo. Okay, and there we are, just trim away all of the excess. And then what I like to do is I like to just turn it around and just tap in these edges. Now just a side note, if you are using mica powders or pastels, you're going to have a little bit of a tricky time here because the pastels or mica powders prevent the translucent clay from sticking to the clay underneath. So you'll need to just spend a bit of time making sure that it sticks. Okay, and then I'll run that through my pasta machine again. Okay, and then I'm going to take it down to my middle setting. Like so. And I'm probably going to take it down another 2 settings to get it about 1/2 millimeter thick. There we are. And you can see that it makes it quite a bit lighter, but it also stretches that translucent out nice and thin. Okay, so that is our watercolor, and I'm just going to put that to the side for the moment. We still need to do a few things with that, but we need to create a mica shift before we can finish off. So I'm going to be using some Cernit Metallics, and you can get these at Linda's Art Spot if you're looking for them in America. If you're looking for Cernit Metallics in Australia, you can get them at polymerclay.com.au. And I'm using steel, silver I do believe, and rose gold. And I just want to make a skinner blend. And it doesn't have to be a perfect skinner blend. If you're having trouble with skinner blends, metallics are great for getting started with skinner blends because they blend together so nicely and they're not as tricky as some of the other colours, more opaque colours. So I'm just flattening that out and I'm going to run that through my pasta machine. Okay, and then you'll always fold it so that you don't want to fold it this way so you can see those 2 colours. You always want it so you can only see one colour and another colour. And you'll just continue doing that, folding it, running it through the pasta machine until you have created your skinner blend. Okay, and it generally takes around 15 rolls to get the metallic clay to blend. Then grab it and grab your cutter or template that you have chosen for your bead, and I'm using my largest rocking rhomboid, and I just want to see how large the skinner blend is because it needs to fit my cutter quite nicely. So it's a little bit long, so I'm just going to fold it up like so. And then just gently push on it, and that will shorten it. And then squish it up so that it lengthens the entire skinner blend, and then run through again. Okay, and that fits quite nicely. Now we're going to create a mica shift with this. And so I'm going to be using this really nice core roller that has these leaves, and again you can get this on Linda's Art Spot, and I'll provide a link to that in the links below. Now the most important thing to do before you do a skinner blend is just to make sure that your clay is properly stuck down to your work surface. I'm using a ceramic tile, a glass tile will also work, but just make sure that it is properly stuck down. Okay, now I'm going to start from one end, pressing firmly, and I'm going to roll. You can see that looks really nice. There we are. Now some areas have lifted up because the Cernit did stick a little bit in the roller, but that's fine. You can see that the clay didn't stay in the roller. And I'm just going to trim up this one side and this one side. And now with all of these scraps, keep them and put them back together in the same way, like that, so that you can still create a skinner blend from that. And then just trim these edges. And now these are pure colours, so this is steel and this is that rose gold. So take that and add that back into your Cernit Metallic packets. Okay. And I'm just making sure that this is clean. There we go. Okay. And now I want to use a nice thin blade for this. Nice thin flexible blade. And I'm going to shave across the surface. And this takes a steady hand and a lot of practice, so if you're not confident with mica shifts just yet, I would recommend starting with a single colour of clay. So if you do mess it up, you can just screw it back up into a ball, run it through a pasta machine and try again, whereas with a skinner blend it's a little bit more tricky. But again, if you did mess up with the skinner blend, all you would do is you grab it at the top, fold it over, run it through a pasta machine a few times to get that blend nice and even again, and then you could try creating your mica shift again. And you can see already that we're creating a really beautiful mica shift. Cernit Metallics just create a really lovely mica shift. Okay, and I'll just continue until I have shaved off all of the raised areas of our pattern. There we are. And then when you're done, grab a piece of greaseproof paper or plain printing paper if you don't have any greaseproof paper, and just burnish. And this will flatten out your piece without the need to run it through a pasta machine. Pasta machine will stretch the pattern, it will thin out the clay, and it will do an okay job of flattening it out, but you generally will have to go down a few settings before it flattens out correctly, and by then your pattern will have gotten distorted. So if you can burnish it to remove any scratches or raised areas, that's the best way to go. Okay, and when you feel it, you should not be able to feel any raised parts. And this is important because we're going to be sanding later on, and it needs to be as clean as possible before we sand, because it just makes the sanding process a lot easier. So I like to do it with my fingers first, and then I'll take a roller and use the roller to burnish, so that we have a nice even sheet of clay. And the reason I have the greaseproof paper on top of here is because otherwise your clay will smudge while you're doing this. So it is important to have the paper there. Okay. And there we are. That's really nice. And now it's only going to look really nice once we have sanded it. But at the moment you can still see what a beautiful mica shift that is created. Now I am going to trim up these edges and that can just go back over here with my blend. Okay, and these edges are a little messy, so that can go back in my steel spot, and this can go into my rose gold spot. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's going to fit. It needs to be run through my pasta machine setting just a little bit to stretch it out. Oops, I dropped one of my blades. There we are, ran that through a pasta machine and now it fits. Okay, so now we are ready to start with our watercolor, because I want to overlap the watercolor basically onto the mica shift here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my favourite spot, which I think is probably over here. I really like this section as well. I think there's the best spot. So I'm just going to use my cutter to cut that out. And then the way you'll break this down is you'll trim away the spot here, because that is your steel colour, so that can go back in your box. That is your rose gold, and then here is your Skinner blend again, so put that again with your remaining Skinner blend, and now you can reuse that, so no waste apart from the parts that you shaved off. Okay, and I'm just smoothing this off around the edges, and then I'm essentially going to just cut it down the middle here, like so. Then I'm going to lift this bit, being very careful when I do this because I don't want distortion. Okay, then I'm going to grab my watercolor, and I'm just going to rip off this first little bit. I'm going to take this and you want to just overlap it like so. And then just continue going down your piece like so. And go a little bit further just to make sure that you have enough clay there, and then start up here again and continue overlapping. And this will allow you to build up enough clay that it is a thick enough sheet, and then just continue going until you have enough to fill the side of your cutter. Okay, and here is how it should look now. And you can see that we've got plenty around the edges just to give us some room to move. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take greaseproof paper, because sometimes your fingers have little bits of clay on them, so it's always safer to just use some nice clean paper. And through the paper we are going to press on our watercolour. And it's best to press against the grain. That creates the best watercolour. And then I'm just going to start burnishing. And this will smooth out seams, it will smooth out everything so that it looks really nice and smooth, but we've got all of these beautiful three-dimensional elements. Okay, and I'm just going to feel, I can still feel lots of bumps, so I'm just going to continue burnishing until no more bumps are left and it's completely smooth. Okay, now that it is completely smooth, we can very easily fit our piece in here. So that's good. So now all you want to do before you do cut it out though, is you want to lift that up, and here you can see on the back what it looks like. Now I'm just going to sit it on this greaseproof paper for a while so it doesn't stick or anything like that, and I just want to see where I want to cut it. Okay, and now I've been looking at the image transfer that I've chosen. I'm not quite sure if it's the best fit, because I'm debating on whether or not I want to use this one. No, I think that still looks good. But here are another few choices that you can have a look at. Yeah, I still think that one works best. It's always good to just go back and make sure that it does work, because sometimes you need to make changes to your design, but I'm quite happy with that. Okay, now we are going to cut out our piece. Just positioning it in the right spot, and then I'll press down firmly. And then I'll bring that out of the way. I don't want that sticking in my cutter. There we go. And just use your blade to just gently go around the edges and remove any fuzzy bits, because sometimes there are some very minor fuzzy bits. I just use my blade to trim those around. Okay, and then you need some black that is the same thickness as your piece here. And all I'm going to do, so I'm just going to pop that to the side, and I'm going to grab my cutter here, and I'm going to take a chunk out there, and that will give me the correct curve to work with. There we go. Now this bit you don't have to worry about. This is completely freehand, so if you muck it up you can always just put it back into a sheet of black. So don't go and press it up against your bead until you're completely happy with how it looks. And all we're going to do is we're just going to somewhat randomly cut out that piece up here, and it is going to get stuck to my blade due to the fact that we are working on deli paper. So just remove this black and then bring that back down. You can use your blade to do that. Actually, it's really just sticking to my blade, so I'm going to see if I can move this back to the tile, because it's getting stuck and that's no good. And I'll just see if I can salvage it with my blade quickly. Okay, and I'm just gonna trim it off at random, and just be careful not to cut your bead when you're doing this. There we go. And then the last thing to do is just to use your blade to round out those corners. And just see if you like it. I'm probably going to do this again. I quite like it, but I would like this end to be a bit thicker. I don't want it to be so even in thickness. I'd like this end to be thicker and this end to be a little bit thinner. But that's the goal essentially. You're going to do that at the top, and you're going to do the exact same thing at the bottom. Okay, and so here is how it will look when we are completely done. So I've just popped this over here so that I can see how it is going to look. And I think I quite like it at the moment, but that is for later. Alright, now this is where we are at. So now just go and gently smooth your clay, and just make sure that your corners are correctly rounded, because that's quite important with this. I do think that the corners do need to be rounded. Okay, and then what I like to do now is, because we're in a fairly fragile state, whereas if we pick this up the black is going to get distorted, I would either put this in my oven for about half an hour at previous recommended temperature, or I would just quickly heat set it with my heat gun, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So I'm just quickly going to smooth the top, make sure there's no fingerprints, things like that, before I go in. And then I'm going to go in with my heat gun and just cure it. And you have to wait for it to warm up. There we are. There we are. Now you just want to have waited until this has cooled before you lift it up. So I've done that as well, because otherwise it can smear. There we are. And generally if you're using the heat gun, the back side will still be raw, which is good because we now want to apply a backing immediately because these black strips need to be secured. So I'm just going to bring over my greaseproof paper again. I'll just stick that down out of the way, and then you're going to grab what's left of your black clay. You're going to run that through your pasta machine again. Okay. And then I'm going to be using the same core roller as before. That time I forgot to make sure that this was properly burnished onto my tile, and you can see how that can cause trouble. There we go. And I'll just chop away that section there. And this section up here. And the reason I'm using this texture is because it's the same as the one that we used on the front, and so it's good to keep that consistent. Okay, and just clean up your tile. Bring this over with my greaseproof. And if we need to stretch it a little, I can do that. Oops, there's it. It's a little fiddly. Need to stretch it out just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and now I'm just going to gently place that onto the back. Now because the back is still raw, we don't have to worry about putting bacon bond or anything like that on. But if your clay did go in the oven and is completely baked, then you might want to use just a little bit of liquid clay to bond the textured back with your front. Okay, now we just need to gently trim this away. And just be careful when you're doing this because it's very easy to squish your texture. And this is where working on a piece of greaseproof paper is quite nice because it's spinnable. And I'm just going to continue trimming around until it is nice and clean. Now on these edge bits, don't worry too much about cleaning it perfectly because they're going to move around, and so sometimes you might need to go back onto your back and stick them back into place. So I'm going to do that quickly. Anyway, I'll just continue trimming until it's nice and clean. Okay, and here is how it should look now that we're trimmed. And you should also go along the back and just gently smooth out any fingerprints that you might have created. Okay, now the last thing we need to do is we need to create our bail. Just quickly going to smooth along this section. Okay, and now we need to create our bail. So put that off to the side and roll out our black again. Okay, so you're going to need some black. a sandy texture. I'm using my sandpaper texture. I'm just gonna press that onto the clay. And you're also going to need something to wrap this around to create your tubes. And we're going to be trying a slightly different stringing technique than I have shown in previous videos. So I'll show you that in just a second. But what we need to do now is just trim up this, trim up the top, trim up the bottom, and trim up this one side. Okay, and just keep that. And then grab your tube that you're going to wrap this around. And wrap it as near the top as you can. Unwrap, cut, continue wrapping. And then this is the part that is going to touch our clay, so we don't have to worry about that getting smoothed out and not textured. Just make sure that it is pressed in properly though. And then you can use your blade to gently start pushing this off your tube. Because we don't want to use our fingers for that. There we are. And I'm gently going to press that back into shape. I'm not going to be squishing the texture like that. And then gently press on the top. You can use your knife to do that if you want. There we go, that's our one. We want to make another one just like it. Okay, and we're just going to bring along this. And I want to put this right near the top. And now I'm actually going to take those two spots that are flat and I'm going to just press this gently together. And let's see, we don't want to add it because what we're going to do is we're going to have the cord come down through here and up. So what I might actually do is I might just press these together like so. Use this to chop off this bottom section. There we are. And that will give us some more room to work. It won't be so thick. Okay, and I'm just smoothing out any defects. That's much better. Alright, and I want them to sit just below the line up here. And now, how is this going to hang? Is it going to hang somewhat like that or like that? Okay, and I think I've got them in the right spot. Okay, now I'm just going to grab some liquid clay, and this is translucent liquid clay. Now I'm just going to pop it onto a tile here. And I'm going to use a skewer quickly. Just paint that around the edge of this, just to make sure that it is bonded properly. Because this is where you really need the strength in your pendants. So you don't want to have a weak spot here. Just paint your liquid clay all around those edges and that will give it a much more secure bond. You can use translucent. Translucent's the best because it then works with any colour clay. But if you have any black liquid clay and you have a black backing, you can use that as well. So I'll just do that, and then when I am done, I'm going to put this in the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, because that is what the majority of my pendant is made out of. If you've only got a small amount of Cernit in here, you don't have to worry about baking it correctly at Cernit's recommended temperature, or even taking into account Cernit, because the backing here, which is the strong part of our pendant, and we've got the watercolor, and we've got these black strips up top, that's all Primo. So we're going to be just baking it at Primo's recommended temperature. And there we are. So I'll pop that into the oven, and we're going to bake it just like this on the greaseproof paper for a full hour, and then when it is cooled we're going to give it a quick sand so that it's nice and clean, and then we will apply our image transfer. Okay, and while that is in the oven, we're just going to quickly prep our image transfer. So you're going to need a sheet of white clay rolled out as thin as you can get it, and it must be either white or pearl white. White is the best. I'm just making sure that it's nice and smooth, and you can hear the oven ticking in the background. That won't last for long. Then just apply your image transfer, and what we're going to be doing is we're just trimming out the white, because the image transfer itself is actually translucent, and so if you don't put it on a white backing, you will be able to see the colour of the clay underneath it. So if you don't use white, you'll be able to see the pinks and the mica shifts and everything. So we don't want that. Okay, I'm just going to quickly straighten that out. There we are. And now I'm going to just quickly soak this image transfer in water. Okay, and I've just moved that to a piece of white clay. And actually what I'm going to do is, hold on just one moment, bring this back over here. I'm actually just going to cut it out once I've applied the image transfer, and I've just dried it after it came out of the water. Now I'm just going to gently apply it to the clay. There we are. Beautiful. Okay, then grab your blade, trim right up close. As close as you can possibly get. And you can cut through the transfer, so don't worry about that. So if you go too close and you actually end up cutting on the transfer, it's not like it's going to dome. It will allow you to cut straight through it. There we are. And we're just going to apply that straight on top of our pendant. And so I thought that we would prepare that quickly, because that will give the image transfer a little while to dry off, and then we'll just apply it straight onto the pendant. And the reason I'm going to do that is because we're just going to be applying resin anyway, so it's okay if the image transfer isn't lying completely flat on the pendant. Okay, and here is how it looks now that it is out of the oven. So what we want to do is we want to sand the front here and the back a little bit if possible, and then I also want to smear these sides so that we get a nice smooth edge, and then we can place our image transfer here. So just going to grab my polishing papers, and I'm going to start with my 400, and we don't have to be really strict with this sanding. We don't have to be sanding off every single little defect. We just want to do a overall good sand, because this will just make it look better once we put the resin on. It will clear out any little defects and things like that for the most part, but we don't need to get it to like a buffed shine. We just want to clear out any little defects, fingerprints and things like that. So just sand the front like that, and then you also want to sand the back. And when we're done sanding, we are going to smear those sides. And now with the sanding, you want to start with a 400 and you want to work your way up to the highest grit you can get. In my case, it's an 8000. The higher you can go, the better. Okay, so just continue sanding until you're happy with it. Okay, so here it is. I've just given it a light shine. So it's got a kind of satin sheen to it. And the back's also been sanded so that those leaves now shine. But that needs to be buffed later on. So now we're going to take a bit of black clay and just warm this up in your hands. You want it to be nice and soft. Okay. And then now, once it's soft, just position it and smear it along the surface of your piece. And it's a little tricky with these outside pieces, so you'll need to be a little patient. And also I like to just get some sculpting tools, so I like to get it as close as I can, like that. And then I'll bring in some sculpting tools afterwards to help me smooth it out. Okay, and then just make sure that you don't have any little bits of clay kind of floating around, and then just go and smooth it with your finger like so. There we go. And so that's how you would do that side and that side. And then for these two, you'll grab your clay again and then just warm it up each time because this softens it up, and position it and run it along the edge. And then this just clears up any seams that you have when we were joining the back to the front. It's a little bit of a messy job, but you'll just have to work through that, and then it just starts coming together after a little bit. Okay, and so that one was a bit easier. And just make sure you don't have any little bits hanging around, and then just smooth. And just carry on doing that until you have done all of the sides, so that you have a nice, clean, black side. And it will also create just a slight border around the edge. Okay, and here is how it should look. You should have nice, smooth sides. And don't forget these little bits over here as well. And just make sure there's no fingerprints. Okay. And so that is how it should look. Now I'm just going to gently turn that around, and I'm going to be using my image transfer that I showed you how to do earlier. We should be able to take that, and actually before I touch that, I want to just place that face down. And I'm just going to take a little bit of liquid clay, just a touch of translucent liquid clay. I'm just going to drop it on the back. Just smear it out around a little bit. I don't want too much there. It's just going to give a little bit of extra security. But we don't need much. And I have to be very careful when I'm using this because it can break. And it would be preferable if it didn't. And now I want to position that so that it is in the correct spot. So just give me a minute or so to get this in the right spot. Okay, and then when you have it in the right spot, gently burnish to get it to sit down flat on your piece, and then just grab a blade. And all we're doing is we're just making sure that none of that white clay is showing up. Okay, and now I'm just going to grab those bales and I'm just going to twist it around, make sure that I like where it sits. and then I'll put that back in the oven for about half an hour at pretty much recommended temperature, and then we can put resin on it. Okay, and so our piece is out of the oven, and here is how it looks. So now we are going to put resin on it just to finish it off. So I'm just going to pop this off to the side for the moment, and I'm going to bring over my resin cup. I'm just going to get rid of this one little bit of resin that's still stuck in here. There we go. Okay, and now I want to mix up about 10 mils. So I'm going to start with the slow part of the resin, and I'm using ice resin today, and it comes in 2 parts. You can use magic gloss as well if you want. You want a doming resin for this though, so one of those resins that cures with UV and you have to brush it on, such as Teresa's Deep Shine. That's not going to work for this project because it needs to be a doming resin. You want to cover it to cover up all of the little bits and pieces perfectly. You don't want any seams to show, so you want a resin that is going to dome, and ice resin is perfect for that. You can use I do believe it's Ultra Dome or Magic Gloss as well if you're looking for a UV resin, but I'm going to use ice resin. So I'm just going to continue pouring this until I've reached 5 mils, and then I will use the hardener next. Okay, and then once you've mixed up your resin, grab a mixing tool. I'm just using this skewer that has this nice paddle shape on the end, and you're just going to thoroughly mix this until you can't see any more streaks, and then after you can't see any more streaks, mix for about another minute or so. So in total it's around 3 to 5 minutes. It depends on how warm it is. If it's warm, the resin will mix quicker, so it will take about 3 minutes. But if it's cold like it is here, it can take up to 5 minutes. So that's how long I will mix. And then we will let it rest, and I'll show you how to set up your pendant so that bail on the back isn't going to cause you trouble, because it's not going to lie flat. And then we'll pour the resin on. Now keep in mind that this resin takes 24 hours to cure, so you'll want to have a nice little place set up for the resin to sit undisturbed for 24 hours at least. You want to cure it for at least 12 hours. It does say up in 12, but the full cure is in 24, so you wouldn't want to be wearing the pendant until about 24 hours is over. So you want to cure this at least 12 before you start messing with it. So I'm going to cure this overnight, and so you want a nice spot where it can sit, where the cat isn't going to get her hair all over it and the dog's not going to go and find it. So you want it on a nice high shelf out of the way. And that looks like it's mixed enough, so I'm just going to put that off to the side and let those bubbles rise. And as for our pendant, you can see it's not going to sit flat, so what you'll do, let me just zoom out for this quickly, there we go, is you'll grab 2 small tiles of some sort, like so, and just figure out how far apart they can be, like that. Then take a resin mat or something silicone, like these, and place them on those 2 tiles, and then you'll put your bead between them, so the bail is sitting between the 2 resin mats, and it will allow it to sit completely flat. Okay, and I've just let my resin sit for maybe a minute or so, and you can see all those bubbles have risen to the surface for the most part. So now I'm just going to take a straw and I'm just going to blow. And that will get rid of a lot of the bubbles. Then we want to take this and I want to gently add it to the surface of my pendant. And now this is quite watery at the moment, so we only want a small amount. So what I like to do is I like to add a small amount just to cover the surface, and then later I will come back and I'll add some more once it has set up a bit, because right now it's really runny, so you want to just add a tiny little amount, and then later once it's like thick honey, then you come back and you will add more, because then you can get a nice dome without worrying about it spilling over the edge. Whereas now it would if you did any more than what I'm doing now. Okay, and just scrape it all the way up to the edge. Want a nice, clean finish. And you can see how it just deepens all of those colours. I mean, look at the difference between the black there and the metallic particles over there. It's a huge difference. So just scrape it all the way out. Okay. And I might just add just a touch more. But that's about all I would add for the time being. Then you would leave it, let it set up a bit. All the bubbles will have risen to the surface, and then you can add more ice resin to get a really nice dome. But wait until it's set up for that, because otherwise you will get lots and lots and lots of spills. So you'll let that rest, and then go with a straw again and just blow over the surface. Like so. And just continue doing that until you'll have no more bubbles, and then wait until your resin is ready to apply again. Okay, and so here is our piece now that it has been resined. So it looks really, really nice and shiny. And you might need to do a second coat. It's okay, because this piece over here in the middle has been covered up really well. But you might want to do a second coat if you can still feel the ridges here. And you will need to clean up around these little edges, because I'm pretty sure that the resin will spill over. If you manage to not get the resin to spill over there, it will be very good. So if you can, use magic gloss, because that will definitely be easier than ice resin. I don't have any magic gloss in my inventory at the moment, so I did use ice resin because I can clean it up. But to make this easier, I would recommend magic gloss, because it actually pulls away from the edges, and so will make this process a lot easier. You will need to do a few coats though. So now you're going to need some rat's tail, and you're going to want to make it so that you can make a double necklace, like so. So I'm just going to fold this in half, and I want to trim this end. Okay, so you need 2 of those, and then we will thread it through the back here. So that's 1. And now I'm being careful with my pendant because it hasn't cured past the 24-hour section yet, so it can end up sticking a little bit to your tile if you're not careful. Okay, and now I'm just going to grab these both and pull them at the same time, so they both end up somewhat the same length. Okay, I'm just going to try and get them all the same length as well. There we go. So you can shift them around if you want, and I'll get them equal length in just a little while. Then you want to take some sort of a spacer bead that you have chosen on the top of your piece. You want to string that up there, so that when it hangs you can see that. You don't have to necessarily do that, but I do think that would look nice. Okay, now I just need to find 2 there and 2 there. I'm going to just trim them up so that they're equal again. I've given myself some extra thread for this. Then you'll just grab a cord end and get those 2 in there. Then squeeze nice and firmly. And you'll repeat on the other side. Trim to size. Grab a cord end It's going to be a little fiddly. You should be able to get that in easy enough. And then squish. And just give it a little tug to make sure that you've got it. Okay. Then you'll need 2 jump rings and a clasp. Just grab those jump rings and you'll just open the one jump ring, pop your clasp on, pop that onto your cord and close. And repeat on the other side. There we are. And that is your finished necklace. Very easy and very effective. So here is how it will look. So, I do hope that that tutorial was helpful to you, and if it was, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you like these image transfer projects, let me know, and I'll start doing a few more. And let me know what you thought of the new stringing method. I will be trying out some new different stringing methods in the future, so knowing that you guys do enjoy those sorts of new ways of stringing is helpful, so I'll try and figure out some other ways to do stringing. And just let me know what you thought of the overall design of the project, as it's a little bit different from my usual ones. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.